Family, so happy to be here and to see all your wonderful faces this morning. That, of course, was David Lonkevich on flute. David, welcome back. We're so glad to have you, and extra thanks today. And I'm Chic Welsh-Charrier. I'll be your platform assistant, and we are so thrilled to welcome back Susan Choy from Hawaii. And now for our centering prayer, I found both of the opening and closing prayers today from a Unity publication, The Comfort of Prayer. This one stood out to me as I was browsing through the book the other night. Please join me in prayer. The perfect life of God is flowing through my entire body right now, doing its mighty work, cleansing, purifying, and healing anything that needs to be healed. The love of God lives in me as peace and strength. Every atom of my body is an expression of pure spirit and contains wholeness, harmony, and complete perfection. I am calm in every way, and so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.
Thank you so much, David. I'm just speechless after that, and I'm so honored and grateful not only to be here, but to be able to enjoy that beautiful, very exalted musical presentation. So thank you again. Thank you so much. We're all blessed. Have you ever taken time to reflect deeply on your spiritual goals? Do you have time for that? And have you done that recently, maybe during the past year? Because your goals change, don't they? Your spiritual goals, especially. Because consciousness, our individual consciousness and our collective consciousness, is always evolving. And we're often led in different directions when we least expect it, as we've been led in a different direction here in Hawaii with the recent fires on Maui. Sometimes we just don't see things coming, and we become acutely aware of what our spiritual goals are. But in this world, we're encouraged to have worldly goals, to set worldly goals for ourselves. Excuse me, goals such as finishing a degree, or maybe a special project you might have, a house project, maybe a savings project, maybe you're saving for something special, or maybe you're planning to go on a beautiful trip. So we have many worldly goals, but not so often spiritual goals. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit. So have you clearly defined your spiritual goals lately? And if so, how's that going? How's that going for you? Are you meeting with success? Like me, especially recently in the past year or so, life seems to be going by way too quickly. Everything seems to be accelerating, zooming by. And I myself don't want to waste time pursuing ventures that aren't completely aligned with my spiritual goals. How about you? Do you feel that way too? Yeah, some of you are nodding. I know you do. A few days ago, I went to visit a good friend of mine, somebody with whom I meet regularly for spiritual study. We've been meeting, in fact, for, I guess, over 7 years now, one of my best friends. But she recently suffered an unfortunate accident. She woke up about 1:30 in the morning, planning to go to the bathroom, but instead she got a little confused and she mistook the top of the stairway for the bathroom door and pushed into it with her whole body force because she thought the door might have been stuck, and tumbled down about 11 stairs, hard steps, landing on the hard floor. So she ended up breaking her shoulder in 3 places, front, side, and back. She broke her collarbone and she shattered her elbow. It was a shocking event, just like the fires in Maui, and it just seemed to come out of nowhere, totally unexpected. And even when it does happen, we're never prepared. So when I went to visit her, immediately she kept saying to me, "Why did this happen to me, Susan? Why did this happen?" And I said, of course, I don't know why. There's so many reasons we could speculate and go on, but I do know there's a blessing. There's a rich blessing in all of it. There's a gift. In fact, even though my friend was lying there in pain, I could honestly say that this might be answered prayer in some ways, not in the pain and the accident, but in the context of it and in what I thought would unfold. And I said, that's why, Sandy, you need to know what your spiritual goals are. I said, do you remember what we talked about? She said, no, I don't have any spiritual goals, because she was in pain. She forgot we had discussed this. We talked about it at length through our scriptural study. But so I reminded her that she did know. And one of them was to be close to her family. She felt a little distant from her family. She felt a little unappreciated. And as a Unity member, she felt misunderstood, and they did not share in her Unity principles. So she was feeling underappreciated and unloved. And then we also talked about how this came from her own lacking her own lack of self-love and self-appreciation. So as this situation has been unfolding, I can already see how her spiritual goal of love and greater closeness to her family is being fulfilled. And that's just been amazing. Her kids are coming over every day and they're showering her with attention, bringing her gifts of flowers and cards and cooking for her. Her refrigerator's overflowing and her heart is overflowing too. So I can see through this terrible misfortune that so many gifts are already being revealed. And her spiritual goal, which was greater shared love with her family, is being fulfilled. She's also learning a lot about healing, which was another one of her spiritual goals. So because we were talking so much about spiritual goals, I thought, well, I better clarify mine as well. So I decided to write it down. And I thought I'd share it with you just as an example, whether you've done this already or not. So here it is. I desire the complete transformation of my consciousness, attained through the undoing of my worldly conditioning. In this transformed state, I continually abide in boundless peace, love, joy, compassion, and equanimity. Nothing can disturb my peace. Abiding here, I accept and embody the truth of my divine identity. So this is my spiritual goal, and I gave it a lot of thought. I mean, I sat down and I journaled about it before I wrote it. But when I read it back to myself, it somehow transforms me, and it helps me understand where I want to go and what I want to do and what my priorities are. So what do you think? It's very specific, right? And it's talking about a very specific state of consciousness. So I reiterate and I affirm that determining a clear spiritual goal is so important. It's invaluable, because I truly believe, and I think you may too, that whatever you ask for, you receive. Whatever you ask for, you will receive. So what have you been asking for? Remember that without fail, we receive, our prayers are answered. And we remember the words of Isaiah 65. Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. One of my favorites. And also the words of John 15. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, whatever you pray for, and it will be done for you. So if you truly believe that your prayers will be answered and your life is actually an expression of that answered prayer, I think it's important for us to perhaps take some time to clarify what they are. So whatever has unfolded in your life, pleasant or unpleasant, beautiful or unsightly, just know it's been answered prayer, and that answered prayer continues to unfold. So I ask you right now, perhaps begin to contemplate, what is your spiritual goal? What is it? What are you praying for? I know you're praying for others, but what about yourself? What are you hoping to attain from your spiritual path now? So if they aren't quite clear to you, your spiritual goals, I encourage you to take time out to reflect on what they might be, especially because time is going by so quickly, and I'm sure your spiritual goals have changed. So what happens if you don't have clear spiritual goals? Well, I started to ask myself this, and I've seen that when I don't keep them in the forefront of my attention, I make a lot of unwise choices. And this leads to aimless wandering, kind of meandering around, a lot of distractions, and wasting time. Time can be wasted, and we can waste time as well. And in this world of glittering possibilities, it's so easy to get distracted, isn't it? I know what my distractions are because I've been thinking about them a lot lately. Do you? Do you know what your distractions are? Mine are shopping on Amazon lately for pretty summer dresses because it's always warm in Hawaii. I waste a lot of time on Amazon. And my secret addiction is Christmas decorations. I start shopping for Christmas decorations on Black Friday, and I peak right about now. I recently bought this little miniature Christmas tree snow globe that whirls around and plays 7 different Christmas carols. And it's just a bubble of joy. I just love it. And I also spend a lot of time scrolling on Facebook because I love taking pictures and watching cat videos because I have 4 cats, and cats just bring me a lot of joy. So there are so many unique and amusing distractions in this world. And that's what this world is. And somebody shouted out, I teach Course in Miracles as well, and we were talking about idols, which is what the Course in Miracles calls distractions. And somebody just shouted out, very excited about her insight, this whole world is just one big distraction. It is, and it's designed to keep our minds away from God. So I'm not saying don't relax and pursue all your amusements, because we all need to relax. But as another student of mine in a spiritual gifts class said, the problem is that sometimes we spend excessive time on these distractions. It's just excessive. So it's fine to pursue these amusements. That's what the world is for. And we're here to experience joy as well. But just notice perhaps how much time you're spending indulging in them. And let's agree that life goes by so quickly, especially when we get to this age. And we don't want to miss any grand opportunity to awaken, right? To be called home and remember our true spiritual identity. So I would like to read from one of my favorite poets. I love poetry as well. And my favorite poet is Mary Oliver. I don't know if you know her. She's considered one of our great American poets. She's a praise poet. She writes a lot about nature. And this is an excerpt from her poem entitled The Summer Day. I bet you've heard it before. I don't know exactly what prayer is, but I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And that's how she ends the poem. That's her famous quote. So I ask you again, Mary and I both ask you, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I don't think it's scrolling on Facebook or watching cat videos. I'm sure that it's something very specific etched in your heart. And if you ponder and pray on it, your life will be an expression of that prayer. I'd like now to share my screen and share a quote. And it says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for ourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that's from Matthew 19. And I love that last line. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So our treasure is whatever we're holding in our hearts. Our treasure is our highest spiritual goal. So again, I encourage you to think about it. And then once you've decided what that is, perhaps you might, as I have done, come up with a spiritual curriculum. As a former teacher, sometimes I can't help myself, right? It doesn't have to be that formal. There we go. Okay, here is my spiritual curriculum. I thought I'd share it with you. I've given this a lot of thought, time, and attention as well. The first part is prayer. Spending time in prayer is very important to my spiritual goals. And part of prayer is asking for guidance. I ask guidance daily because I know otherwise I don't know what I'm doing. Second part for me is meditation. I spend morning and evening in meditation. Third part is sacred study, which includes study of scripture, metaphysical Bible study, Course in Miracles. I read a lot of Joel Goldsmith's. And sacred service. Somebody earlier was mentioning about volunteering, and I know in Unity, you're no stranger to that. And another part of my spiritual curriculum is spending time in nature. Surrounded by water here in Hawaii, a lot of us are spending time in the ocean. I like to go boogie boarding, surfing. Just being in the water is so cleansing, being connected to the Aina, as we call it, the earth, water. And I know you in Virginia and Maryland, you're surrounded by beauty. You have so many gorgeous parks, Potomac Park, and all the great waterfalls. And the most fabulous, resplendent season of all is upon you, the fall. And I know that I suspect that many of you renew yourselves in nature during that resplendent time. And finally, spiritual nutrition. I eat a lot of plant-based foods because I feel it brings me closer to God because they're filled with light. So I wanted to share that with you, not only to give you an idea of how you might go about thinking about a spiritual curriculum, but just so you have a better idea of who I am too. And I love to share. So thank you for listening. So once you've established your goals, then I think it's important to look at your relationship with time and the manner in which you fulfill them. Do you remember the scene in Alice in Wonderland, one of my favorite stories by Lewis Carroll, when the white rabbit in the waistcoat with the pocket watch stops her and exclaims to Alice, right before she grows very large, unexpectedly, "Oh, my fur and whiskers, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late." And Alice says, "Now, this is curious. What could a rabbit possibly be late for? Please, sir." And White Rabbit says, I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late. Remember that? And Alice says, it must be awfully important, like a party or something. Mr. Rabbit, wait. And White Rabbit says, no. I'm overdue. I'm in a stew. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late. So I just love this story and I wanted to reenact it because it's just the way we live in the world so often, isn't it? Can you relate to that? Or maybe you're already moving at a slower spiritual pace. But what could a child of God, a holy child of God, possibly be late for? There's nothing to be late for, right? As we always say, everything's on time and everything's in divine order. But this feeling of being in a perpetual hurry has spilled over in my life. I recently, well, not very recently, it's been 3 years, I entered ministerial school and I have a lot of deadlines and I have a lot of things to do as well. And I have to be careful that I don't lose sight of my spiritual goals. And I want that same for you. Because when we're aware of our spiritual goals, even, it can become a kind of ambition. It can easily turn into greed if we resort to overzealous craving and clinging, etc., and weaving fantasies around what we might achieve on our spiritual path. Yes, so I'm asking us to just be open to slowing down And that's something I'd like to talk about a little bit more. As I said, I'm in ministerial school now. I'm in the Unity National School of the Pacific Rim. And we have a lot of deadlines. We have to do a lot of reading, a lot of teaching. And I'm surprised when I take my classes with other students and getting to know them, I realize that they're all like that white rabbit. They're late, they're late, they're late for everything. They're mostly full-time students with full-time jobs. They work at various Unity churches on the mainland. Most of them are taking 4 of these graduate classes at once while working 3/4 time or full-time at Unity churches as music directors, program coordinators. And at the same time, they're raising 2 or 3 school-aged children. So maybe some of you know what that's like. You feel pretty squeezed. And I'm hoping you're not feeling that way. But it's important to become aware when we are. During the middle of one of my classes, 2 students fell sick, I think, because they were so overwhelmed, because they were always in a hurry. Another one of my friends fell off a ladder. Another one got injured. And I think it's just all a result of feeling imbalanced and not paying attention. So one day the professor just stopped us all and just said, you know, what is your hurry? Why are you all in such a hurry to become ministers? And we just said, I don't know. I think we just kind of lost our spiritual perspective in that sense. But ministerial work, and all spiritual work for that matter, is supposed to be deep and soulful. It's supposed to be a reflective process that unfolds actually outside of time. So when we are in that spiritual state, there is no time, and space can disappear too. So that's something to keep in mind. But we also should keep in mind that there's something inside of us, perhaps due to our conditioning, because we're born into a progressive capitalist society and we're conditioned by a Puritan work ethic. There's something in us that wants to move very quickly. So part of this talk today is just to ask you to take time and look at the speed at which your life is unfolding, and maybe ask yourselves, how might I slow down? The Course in Miracles talks a lot about how the ego, that false part of our mind that really believes in separation, wants us to be very speedy, wants us to move at a very quick pace, and doesn't want us to slow down, because if we do, then we might remember God in our true spiritual identity. But think for a moment, what does life look like when you're speeding in a car at 80 miles per hour? And I know you've all been in a car driving at that speed. Your life just speeds by, doesn't it? Life speeds by. It's just a blur of images. And we want to remember everything. We don't want to miss one gift, do we? So let's take time to slow down. What is the speed limit to spiritual awakening? I've been thinking a lot about this now and just noticing. I've taken up very deeply a practice called Vipassana meditation, which asks us to slow down. And it basically states that the slower you go, the more you see. The slower you go, the more you see, and the more clearly you see what your life is offering you. Not long ago, I attended a 5-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And Vipassana itself means to see things as they are, to see truly as they are. And I went to a beautiful temple in Palolo Valley here on Oahu. It's not that far from where I live, in the mountains. And Vipassana also requires us to observe silence. So I was to observe silence for 5 days. We did this through sitting meditation and walking meditation. And I don't know if any of you have ever engaged in walking meditation, But as you practice it, the more you practice it, the slower you go, because your awareness becomes more and more refined. So I signed up for this retreat because it's a requirement, first of all, on the ministerial path. We're required to take 2 silent retreats a year, which I think is fantastic. But also because I'm grieving the loss of my sister. I lost my sister Beth a few months ago. And I know that I needed peace, I needed calm, I needed meditation to understand what that gift was, because grief can be indeed a very rich blessing. So as a seasoned meditator, I was confident that this particular retreat was going to be easy for me, joyful, and very relaxing and peaceful. However, something strange happened. Something very strange happened. By the evening of the first day of silence, I began to feel completely overwhelmed by this enormous, elephant-sized dragging fatigue. It was a fatigue unspeakable that I had never felt before. I felt this fatigue wanted to just blot me out, annihilate me. I could barely walk, let alone keep my eyes open. And I couldn't wait to go home. I went to bed at 8 p.m. that day and slept right through the night, even though I'm normally an insomniac. I heard someone say earlier that they only got 3 hours of sleep. That's me every night. But I slept so deeply. And I thought, my goodness, what's going on here? So as is the Vipassana tradition, we're invited to interview with our teacher during the retreat to see how our meditation is progressing. So when I met with my teacher, Dr. Gregory Pai, the first thing I asked him is why the meditation was making me so exhausted. How can meditation exhaust me? All I'm doing is just sitting around, basically. I should feel energized, right? But he said, prolonged meditation creates an altered state of consciousness because your metabolic rate is slowing down. It's slowing down. So is your blood pressure, so is your heart rate, so is your rate of digestion. Everything is slowing down. Even the aging process is slowing down, which is good news. So he said, for you to come here and step out of this race car you call your ministerial path right now, it means that your nervous system actually had to make a huge adjustment. As we meditate, our nervous system adjusts and we adapt to the slower energy, and we can actually end up feeling exhausted. But what happens also in meditation, that our body is transforming, our body mind, as I call it, and it's beginning to hold the higher frequencies of peace and joy and even ecstasy, which I've experienced in these states. So my teacher, Dr. Greg, said, in this way, the meditation process, the meditative process is akin to a pot of boiling water. So the longer you meditate, the more furious the boil. But if you remove the pot from the stove, it starts to just simmer, and then it just turns to a calm little pot of water again. So I had been keeping that pressure on, and that energy inside me was bubbling and boiling over. The divine energy within us begins to bubble and boil over when we sit in prolonged states of prayer and meditation. So back to slowing down, when we enter those slower states of prayer and meditation, we're actually creating a spiritual acceleration, ironically. And who knew better than that? Who knew better about that than our dear friend and co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore? Beautiful quote from Myrtle, who knew about the power of no thought. God seeks always to restore harmony, strength, life, wholeness in that which he has created. Our holding thoughts like these and communing with the indwelling presence in the silence gives to the healing Christ within the best way to do his work quickly. The best way to do his work quickly. The silence. So that's pretty amazing. We know about the power of thought. We practice the power of thought in unity. But I know, at least in my congregation, sometimes we forget about the power of no thought, the power of silence. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, if you'll just stay with me. I'd like you just to think about how you feel about silence. If you're in a group, if you're in a class, and suddenly there's a pause, and the pause gets longer and longer, and nobody seems to be filling it, how comfortable are you with that? And in your daily conversations, how do you respond when there's silence between you and your friend? How quickly do you break the silence? One of the greatest blessings of my 27-year-old marriage with my husband, Barry Choy, is that we sit in silence and we feel perfectly at peace. We drove to the North Shore recently on Oahu, which is about an hour drive from where we live. And we just drove in perfect silence, just watching the waves break on the shoreline. We listened to some flat key music on the way, but it was such a joy to be able to sit with him in silence. And silence shared is even more powerful than the silence we enjoy in our singular meditations. So if you have a friend like that, someone who allows you the gift of silence, treasure him or her, because it is such a blessing. One of my teachers, one of my greatest spiritual teachers, is a man named Swami Kripalu. I'm also a yoga teacher, and I come from the Kripalu tradition of yoga. And in that, we practice a lot of pranayama, which is breath work, and chanting, etc. But Swami Kripalu has always been my inspiration because he knew the power of the thoughtless state of silence. In addition to spending 8 to 10 hours a day in depth yoga, which is breathing practices and chanting, he later spent almost 12 years in total silence. 12 years in total silence. So if he understood that there's power in silence, we should accept that. We should understand that. All the great spiritual masters are telling us that there's so much power in silence. And therefore, inviting more silence into our lives is one of the surest ways to attain our spiritual goals and to discern, most importantly, what they are. The slower you go, the more you see, the more clearly you see. So the world demands you speed up, but Spirit is asking that you slow down. So I'd like to just ask you a couple of questions about your relationship with the silence, because I think true spiritual transformation is there. You can take this with your eyes closed or your eyes open. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and I'd like you to ponder them. These questions come from a visualization exercise from a book I highly recommend by Leon Vanderpool. The book is called A Shift in Being, and it's about transformation through realization of your spiritual goals. So as I said, this exercise will help us note the speeds at which we tend to move through the various common experiences in our lives. How fast do you talk in general? And how do you feel when someone talks very fast and nonstop? How do you feel? How fast do you walk? And if you're walking with someone, if you're out on a hike or something, and someone's walking slower than you, Do you slow down and match your walking rhythm to that person's, or do you charge ahead? How fast do you eat? Do you put your fork down between bites? Do you chew slowly and mindfully? Do you eat while performing another activity, such as reading or watching TV? We all know that multitasking doesn't really work because we can't do two high functioning activities that involve language, for example, at the same time. The brain just can't do it. It can switch back and forth, but it can't do two linguistic activities like reading and talking at the same time. Another question for you. How fast do you drive? And how do you respond emotionally to slower drivers? Don't you love them? Especially when you're in a hurry, right? Have you ever gotten a speeding ticket? How fast do you read? Do you pride yourself on being a fast reader? Do you ever read 2 or 3 books at once? How many books are open on your cocktail table? Maybe some of you have heard of Lectio Divina. It's a practice whereby we turn reading into a very slow and mindful meditation. I highly recommend it. Just a couple more questions. How fast do you respond to emails or text messages when you receive them? Do you take your time to formulate a slow, mindful response, or do you just dash out a message as quickly as you can because you want to get that message out there and you want to get back to some other activity? And when you're in a restaurant, how fast do you order? How quickly do you expect service? And what is your emotional response when the service is a little slower than you expected? Are you happy to wait? Are you patient with that? And this is my favorite because I spend so much time in grocery stores. How fast do you grocery shop? Do you tear down the aisles with your grocery cart, possibly even resenting the slower shoppers that might get in your way in the aisle because they're taking your time? And how do you feel when you're waiting at the checkout line? That's always my favorite, right? And then the last one, what about your chores? How fast do you clean your house? How fast do you vacuum? How fast do you wash your car, dust, mop, put things away? And how do you feel while you're cleaning? So we have to remember that the spiritual life isn't just one thing. We have spiritual goals, but often our mundane activities present us with the greatest opportunities to practice mindfulness and thus pay attention and learn, because there are secret lessons in all of that. So even in the most mundane activities, we can realize our spiritual path. So as I read that list, perhaps you identified with an activity or two in which you're not typically grounded or slow and grounded in the more nourishing rhythms of spirit. And if that's true, I'm not asking you to judge or condemn yourself. No way. That's not what this is about. This is just about noting your rhythm and perhaps asking yourself if you're responding to any unconscious conditioning for speed, to get things done quickly and to make things happen fast. I encourage you to notice. Note when you are in a speedy state, because stress and tension predominate then, and impatience and irritability arise in those states. And you're no longer operating in the rhythms that are conducive to spiritual flow, which is health, well-being, and growth, spiritual evolution. So let's keep in mind how we move through our daily activities, because this is our spiritual path every day. And however you move through them, this is how you're moving along your spiritual path in general. Maybe you want to slow down. Maybe you're moving a little too fast. I don't know. But if so, you might be missing the great gifts, the great spiritual gifts that we find along the way. So let's commit to moving slowly and mindfully throughout our day. At least we can start with today, the rest of today, Sunday, and even through the rest of the weekend. And if we do that, we can recognize we're acting in alignment with our divine identity as spirit. We're giving the gift of attention to every facet of this amazing life we've been given, because we don't want to miss a thing. And our slower rhythms are enhancing our health and well-being, enhancing our connectedness with all of creation, and most importantly, accelerating the fulfillment of our highest spiritual goals. So I'm going to share my screen one last time to conclude with an affirmation that I wrote. Here it is. And I'll read it first, and then we can read it together. I move through life slowly, mindfully, and joyfully, matching my pace to the rhythms of spirit. I am uplifted, my consciousness transformed. So let's say that out loud together now. I move through life slowly, mindfully, and joyfully, matching my pace to the rhythms of spirit. I am uplifted, my consciousness transformed. And so it is, and we let it be. Amen. And thank you so much for listening. And let's prepare now for meditation. I invite you to get very comfortable in your chairs, wherever you may be seated. At the same time, perhaps sit up a little taller. Lift your heart and lift your crown to the sky. Drop your shoulders down away from the ears. Relax your foreheads, soothing away any tension from what may have been a busy morning. Relax your temples and soften your cheeks. Drop your attention even lower now, down into the heart center. And take a gentle breath into the heart. With every inhale, feel the radiance of the heart. Feel its special qualities: unconditional love, kindness, generosity. The seat of all our unfolding spiritual goals. And now drop your attention even lower to the area below the navel. And breathe gently into this area, getting more and more relaxed, more and more at peace. At the end of the next exhale, inhale to maximum capacity to the heart and hold your breath there for just a few seconds. And exhale very slowly all the way back down to lower belly, feeling release. And feel even more at peace, more open, and ready to receive whatever it is Spirit wishes to give you today. After the next exhale, take another full inhale up to the crown center and hold your breath at the crown for just a few seconds. Feel the light at the crown building. And exhale very slowly, allowing release. Returning your attention back to the area below the navel. And relaxing deeply now. And here we abide in spirit, abiding in stillness. We listen deeply within. Take a few moments now just to tune in to any sensations that may be arising in the body and mind. And then focus on the most predominant sensation in the body. Perhaps if you're sitting in a chair, it's the sits bones. Or maybe your shoulders have become a little tense again, so drop them down once more. Just notice. Notice all sensations, and then allow them to dissipate. Let's take a few moments now to simply rest in the silence. And listening within, we know that Holy Spirit is guiding us toward the fulfillment of our highest spiritual goals. We ask for clarity of these goals. We ask for assistance in their fulfillment. Knowing, however, that all prayers are answered, we rely and trust in their fulfillment. And for all this and more, we are most truly grateful. And we let it be. We let it be in deep appreciation. And so it is.
And now, if you all could join me in a closing prayer. Let's unite our hearts together in prayer as we look forward to the rest of our week. With the joy of God in my heart, I give thanks for the fullness of life. My thoughts are uplifted and in tune with spirit. Good moves through me as a nourishing river of gladness and thanksgiving. For family, friends, and a place to call home, my gratitude comes from an overflowing heart. I am assured of divine love and blessed with peace, guidance, health, and abundance. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.
We are so blessed here at Unity Center DC for extraordinary speakers, talented musicians who share with us each week their God gift, their message, their inspiration. And for us as recipients, I'd like you to take this moment and be grateful. If you want to express your gratitude by giving a gift to Unity Center DC, it's possible. We'll put up on the screen the options, but you can give online, you can mail a cash or a check to the address you'll see on the screen, so that we can continue this ministry, which has blessed us all. Thank you.